The storm rolled across the Wyoming plains like a living beast, dragging sheets of rain and dust through the darkening sky. Wind howled across the open land, bending the tall grass until it nearly touched the muddy ground. Most folks in that part of the territory had already shuttered their doors and tied down their barns, waiting for the storm to pass. But one rider was still out on the trail. Caleb Turner leaned low over the neck of his horse, a tall bay stallion named Ranger. His hat was pulled tight against the wind, and his long coat snapped behind him like a torn flag. Caleb had spent most of his life alone on the frontier. His ranch sat miles away from the nearest town, and most people in Dry Creek knew him only as the quiet cowboy who rarely spoke and never stayed long. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating the empty road ahead. Caleb squinted through the rain. At first he thought the shape near the roadside was just a fallen fence post or a sack blown from a wagon. But Ranger suddenly slowed, snorting nervously. Caleb followed the horse's gaze. There was someone lying beside the road. He pulled the reins and slid down from the saddle, boots sinking into wet dirt. The storm roared around him as he approached the still figure. It was a woman. Her dress was soaked through with rain, the pale fabric streaked with mud. A small leather suitcase lay beside her, half open, its contents spilling into the grass. Her golden hair clung to her face as the wind pushed it back and forth. Caleb knelt down. "Miss," he called over the storm. No answer. For a moment he feared she might already be dead. But then he saw her chest rise weakly beneath the soaked fabric. She was alive. Without hesitation, Caleb removed his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. She felt frighteningly cold, like someone who had been lying in the storm far too long. He glanced down the empty road. No wagon, no horses, no town for miles. Whoever left her here hadn't planned on coming back. Caleb lifted her carefully and carried her to Ranger. The horse shifted but held steady as Caleb swung the woman up in front of the saddle. "You're coming with me," he muttered. The ride back to his ranch took nearly an hour through the storm. Rain poured down in sheets, and thunder shook the ground beneath the horse's hooves. Caleb kept one arm around the unconscious woman to keep her from falling. By the time the small ranch house came into view through the darkness, both of them were soaked to the bone. Inside the cabin, Caleb lit a lantern and quickly started a fire in the stone fireplace. Warm light flickered across the wooden walls as he laid the woman gently on the bed in the corner. She was shivering violently. Caleb turned his back respectfully while placing dry blankets near her. "You'll need to change out of those wet clothes," he said quietly, though he doubted she could hear him. He stepped outside for several minutes, letting the storm batter the porch roof while the fire warmed the cabin. When he returned, the woman was still unconscious but wrapped tightly in the blankets. Caleb poured hot water into a tin cup and sat beside the bed, watching the firelight flicker across her pale face. She looked young, too young to be alone out here. And then he noticed the papers sticking from her suitcase. Curious, he pulled them free. The top envelope read, "Mrs. Caleb Turner, Dry Creek Territory." Caleb frowned. Slowly he unfolded the letter inside. It was written in careful handwriting. "Dear Mr. Turner, my name is Anna Whitmore. I received your advertisement for a mail-order bride and I will be arriving in Dry Creek on the afternoon train next Tuesday. I hope I will prove to be a good wife and help you build a home together." Caleb's eyes widened. He had placed that advertisement nearly 8 months earlier during a lonely winter night. But after months without reply, he had forgotten about it. He looked toward the bed again. The woman lying there, Anna Whitmore. His mail-order bride. But if she arrived on the train, why had she been left alone in the storm? Morning arrived slowly, with soft sunlight pushing through gray clouds. The storm had passed. Anna awoke to the crackling sound of a fire and the smell of coffee. She blinked, confused. The wooden ceiling above her was unfamiliar. For a moment she wondered if everything had been a dream. Then she saw the tall man standing near the stove. He turned when he heard her move. "You're awake." His voice was deep but calm. Anna pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders. Where am I?" "My ranch," he said. "About 10 miles from Dry Creek." Her eyes widened. "Dry Creek." Caleb nodded slowly. "You were lying beside the road in the middle of that storm." Anna sat up slightly, wincing from the ache in her body. "I remember the wagon," she whispered. "What wagon?" "The driver from the train station," she said. He offered to bring me to your ranch. Caleb's jaw tightened. And then, he stopped halfway. Anna continued quietly. Said the road was flooded and he couldn't go further. Then he demanded money, more than I had. She lowered her eyes. When I told him I couldn't pay, he threw my suitcase into the mud and left. The room fell silent except for the crackling fire. Caleb felt anger rise slowly in his chest. Leaving a woman alone in a storm like that. It was a cruel thing, even by frontier standards. Anna looked up at him nervously. I'm sorry if this causes trouble, she said. If you don't want me here, I can go back to town once I'm well enough. Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You came all this way to answer my letter. Anna hesitated. Yes. Well, Caleb said, pouring another cup of coffee, seems only fair you stay long enough to see if the place suits you. She studied him carefully. You don't mind. Caleb shrugged. Ranch could use another pair of hands. For the first time since waking up, Anna smiled. The weeks that followed were quiet but steady. Anna quickly proved she was stronger than Caleb expected. She helped repair fences, cook meals that filled the cabin with warmth, and even learned to ride Ranger across the wide fields. The lonely ranch slowly began to feel like a home. One evening as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Caleb and Anna sat on the porch watching the sky turn orange. You know, Anna said softly, when that wagon driver left me in the storm, I thought I'd made the worst mistake of my life. Caleb glanced at her, and now, she smiled gently, now I think the storm might have saved me. Caleb didn't answer right away. Instead he looked out across the endless plains. For years he had believed the frontier was meant for men who walked alone. But sitting beside Anna in the quiet sunset, he realized something he had never understood before. Sometimes hope arrived in the middle of the storm. And sometimes all it needed was someone willing to stop on a lonely road and carry it home.